because it requires muscle. But on the other hand, if you're going to bring your clay when you
Hi, Jen Stein.
okay. Hi there, Jen Stein here. No expert, but I'm going to do the best I can here. No. As you can see, it's really recycled mix. It's a little stiff, which I like for vertical forms. When I'm throwing platters, I prefer for it to be kind of soft because it's easier to smooth it out, and I don't really need for it to hold its vertical state too long. So when I'm throwing a platter, I tend to start it off with nice soft clay. It makes it easier on my wrists. I get it out there, and then I'll pull the lips up part way, and then I'll lift the bat off and set it aside until it stiffens up before I do anything to that flange or pull it out or do anything with it. I don't want to touch it because it'll flop off. But when I'm doing a vertical piece, if you have very soft clay, it tends to slump back on itself. The weight of gravity will just pull it back down again. So I don't mind using stiff clay for that. I find it works a little better for me. There's a couple ways of opening. I've been teaching the kids to use this method with both thumbs. I actually like, this is how I recenter. And I kind of like opening this way. I just go down to where I want it and I pull my fingers across the base, straight across the base inside. And then I can smooth my fingers back and forth from the wall outside to the center of the floor to get that bottom nice and even and smooth. In on the outside, I'm pushing on the outside inward along the bat, creating a groove, which then allows me the ability to grasp. And I like using my knuckle for heavier clay. It gives you more strength than using fingertips for this size piece. And the sponge adds a little tiny bit of lubrication. So I like holding that sponge in my hand too. So I just hold it like that. And then I'm drawing. I always try to keep my two hands touching each other because I find that if they're touching each other, they instinctively act in unison. I want them to act in unison. I want them to sense each other so that I can sense as I'm coming up. I can sense the thickness of the wall. I can sense if there are any bubbles or whatever's going on inside. I just gently pull it up so that. I keep telling my kids, try to lock your hands together if it's possible. Of course, here at this point is no longer possible, but in the beginning it is, and you might as well take advantage of that. It gives you extra strength. Okay, I'm going back down, and I've got some more clay down there that I can bring up. So now I'm just gauging where my two hands are and pulling up. And I'm just keep my two hands. You want your hands, it's as if your two hands were touching if there were no clay. The two of them are acting together, and you saw I just touched my other hand as soon as I came up high enough that I could reach my other hand. I came up and I held on to the hand. And okay, so now we can do another pull. So now I'm going to push in. You should leave when you have a narrow-based piece, and especially if you're working on plaster, which I do at home, you need to leave a little bit of clay on the bat. Otherwise, as you put the pressure up at the top of your piece, pops right off. So it's a good thing to keep a little bit of clay on the bottom. You clean it off at the end. And here's another, well, I'll tell you about this later. Okay. I'm going down, taking more clay, and drawing it upwards. And so far I'm still working in a cylinder form. I suppose I could start shaping this piece. Oops, I got a bit of a wobble there. I'll fix that. There's a bubble in there. There's a couple of bubbles in this wall, but I'll live with them for now. Yeah, there's another one. I didn't wedge too well. I couldn't find, the wedging tables were covered. I didn't know where, anyway. I just wedged it on this bat, which isn't the best way to do it. Okay, so now I'm going to straighten up this wall. I'm using the length of my finger as a rib. This finger like that on the outside, because it gives nice straight edge, and I'm just holding it gently, letting the clay run through till I got it straightened out. Now, if I had a pin tool, if I were home, I'd grab my pin tool and try to pop that bubble, but we'll just let it go. Alright, so now that I've gotten it to pretty much, the walls are pretty even. I've got a little extra clay on the bottom, which you need to give it the strength. I'm just going to do one more pull to straighten the wall out at the bottom. And now I'm starting to shape it. I'm going to come out here, so I'm pushing harder with the inside hand. And now I'm going to allow that inside hand to stay where it is, and the outside hand is coming up over the inside hand, so that the inside hand is holding out the shoulder and the upper hand is creating the neck a little bit, just to try and, okay. Now, whenever you call her in, it's been my experience, I don't know if you can verify that, I've always found when you call her in, your piece goes off somewhat, and that's just, it'll always, the lip will always be slightly off. So, with a vase, when you want to narrow, if you're going to narrow it out, the top of the lip will be a little bit crooked. So, also when you narrow it, when you collar in, oh, for those who don't, collaring in is when you squeeze it like that. There's a couple ways. I like doing it like this, because that way I have 6 pressure spots. The tops of my knuckles, the fingertips and thumbs. That way I get 6 points of contact with the neck. And so once I've gotten that, when you collar in, the clay where you collar in gets a little thicker. So it gives you that little bit more clay that you can pull up. So I'm going to even out this wall so that it's even with the rest of the piece. And there you see the unevenness on the top that lined up. So I'm going to remove that. And I've found lately that I like rolling over my top lip. At first I was hesitant to do that because people say, oh, air bubble, blah, blah. But I found, I found that turning over the lip ends up giving the piece more resistance to warpage. So if you, it prevents it from going out of the circular a little bit. So I see I'm flipping over that top. I like using my thumb underneath. It gives it a nice little thing to flip over, and then roll it under. And then make sure you attach it at the bottom. And you'll have there's a little chamber of air in there, but I've never had a problem because the truth is the lip dries first. So by the time your bottom is dry, your top, there's the air in there is not a problem anymore.
That thickness at the rim.
What's that?
Thickness at the rim does help prevent warping.
Yeah.
On holes and even if you have to.
So I'm not liking the way this. For instance, if you just use your nail like that, you can create a dent in here.
Jen?
I'm sorry?
When you were stabilizing that ripple, what was your inside hand doing?
The following, again, it's following. Just, you want it, the clay runs right between my fingertips. In this case, I had a sponge on the outside because it gave me more even pressure. But the inside hand is just supporting that clay so that it's not pushing inward. Just even pressure and very light.
So
When you're evening it out, it can be very, very light. It doesn't have to be.
It wasn't You didn't have a knuckle, it was just fingertips.
I was using the sponge this time.
No, not outside.
Inside.
Inside?
I
Question.
never.
Fingertips. Yes, like that.
I
Yeah.
never use my knuckles on the inside. Do you ever use your knuckle on the inside?
No.
No, outside.
No.
That's not a cop out.
So in this case, it seems to have slumped quite a bit since I made it. It's gotten thicker at the bottom. So I guess even though the clay was pretty stiff, it's still relaxed down. Because the higher it goes, the more weight there is, and the more it'll tend to slump. Now, if I had set this aside for a while to stiffen up, it would have held its height a little bit better. But in this case, we're just rushing through this, so that's okay. But anyway, so you can basically trim through the piece upright, which is kind of nice.
The other advantage of trimming
What?
like that is you can re-wedge that clay right away.
Yeah, and reuse
You
it.
don't have to recycle.
Right, yes. So that's a
There's
biggie.
a lot of advantages.
That's a real biggie. So, yeah, I like, when I throw at home, I throw with, you can take off an awful lot based on how much space there is in there.
Is that
And I'll end up
recycled
doing
clay
a lot
that
of my
you have a
trimming.
couple of
Whoa.
different clay bodies mixed
I'm
in?
sorry?
Is that recycled clay with a couple of clay
Yeah, this is
bodies?
recycled, so it's a total mixture, and there's a piece of, just a hard lump of something in there that whacked it a little bit off center, but that's okay. Well, basically, yeah. It's a so, yeah, you can, whoa. Okay, I'm mucking it up now. Again, be gentle with your baby once you've made it. It's very thin down here now, so, well, for the sake of argument, let's see what we got here. Ready?
Yay.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Lovely.
All right. So, okay, this is the same piece of clay that we made the vase with. So I'm going to bring it back down and make it into a nice even loaf. And now I'm going to clean up the surface. Get rid of that extra slip, because if you have slip, it's not going to stick. And I found out another thing, that it's not sufficient to just take off the slip off the top. You have to take it right down, all the way down, because otherwise it'll still continue to slip. So now I push this down onto. Now I'm going to cone up this second piece a little bit that wasn't coned before. So this is the new piece of clay. I'm going to work this one a bit. Okay, now I'm going to bring the clay from the bottom up towards that new piece to connect the two, so I can mush them together. Okay. So now I'll clean my hands and I can start throwing again. The hole, drag it across the bottom to create the floor.
Do you have sort of a groove under the wall there?
Up just what?
Groove under the wall inside?
A little bit. Come take a look. It's got about this curvature, so it goes in a little bit of the floor.
It's not like that.
Right. Yeah, it's but the floor is. I try to get the floor pretty straight. Bye, Deborah. Bottom. Reach in. Two hands. Pull up. Just making sure that it makes a full revolution as I pull it up, just because it's... And a lot of this is by feel, that's why I have to look. It's better not to, really. If you can get yourself just to feel that clay. Just feel the clay. Sorry. I, of all people, should understand. My husband's always complaining, speak up, Jennifer! Okay, I'm bringing that lip in a little bit, because it was feeling it was coming out. And I'm going to go thin this out so that it's even. Get this nice and even in here. Okay, now I'm going to go back down again, because we got lots of clay down there. Groove down towards the bat, and then knuckle pull, and bring it up. Getting that groove again, and then drawing it upwards.
I thought Jen said the whole box.
Oh boy. I'm putting too much pressure.
Because that was really great.
So you wouldn't even mind a rerun of?
When you pop a bubble, do you put play back in?
Trying to figure out how to.
Jen, there was a question.
Yes, oh, question, yes.
When you pop a bubble, do you put play in?
I'm sorry, what?
When you pop a bubble, do you put play in?
When you pop a bubble in the clay, do you put clay in?
Just leave it.
I just try to pop them. But right now I haven't even bothered popping them, they're still in there. If I normally pop them, I use a needle tool and then I just gently push my finger in it and then I keep throwing. And that tends to do the trick. If I were hand building, I would, and if it were huge, I would. But if I can avoid it.
There's no way I can teach any number of people those facts and stuff.
Okay, I'm just straightening it out now, and then I'm going to call it quits for the pulling up, and I'm going to start shaping the top. So, yeah, see there's a bubble right there, coming around right in here. Okay, so I'm going to keep pulling, and now I'm pushing in a tiny bit, holding my left hand is staying in deeper at the shoulder, the right hand is coming in. So this is one time where they're off center, is when I'm shaping the shoulders. And when you're collaring in, I found it's best to collar in the top and then draw to that collared in top. Otherwise your top gets kind of floppy and big. So if you can do that, it's preferable. And as I said before, your clay now gets nice and thick here. You got more clay to throw, so you can start by bringing this extra clay up and make yourself a taller neck. It's narrower, so you can bring it up further. And it'll be off, and that's fine. You just trim it. Just make sure that the wall thickness is even, that's all. Okay, no, I don't like this shape. I tend to go for the traditional afro shapes, that's just me. But always try to look at your form. I have a mirror in front of my wheel, so I can take a look in the mirror and it shows me what the shape, the contour of the pot is. So keeling over isn't quite as effective as seeing
Or
it
leaning
straight
back
on.
and pulling off your chair, leaning back
Right,
far
right,
enough
right.
to see. That happened to me, okay?
I can see that.
You're not alone.
Okay, how about, you want to see how, should we make a bottle form out of this instead of a vase? Just for the fun of it? Okay, I'm going to narrow this up the way, I'm just doing all, but you know, this works well too. The 6-pointed one. And I'm drawing it up and in. One thing that I learned from oh man, the guy at Peters Valley. Bruce. He said, don't keep using the same motions over and over again because you'll create repetitive stresses. Repetitive motion will create stresses in your body, so try to do different things at different times. So he had us centering and pulling up in all sorts of weird ways. It was really kind of fun. I did a large form class with him at Old Church. Okay, I'm not cutting off the top until I'm finished with all this, because that way I get all the clay out of it that I need. Let's say this were... So see, I'm just collaring it up. I kind of like the swirly-whirly. And then I'll cut off the top. That was not very good. How about just straight across? All right. So going in and just cleaning it up a bit. Okay. So here you can do the same thing that I was doing before if you want. Just take off the extra clay from the outside. It simplifies your life. Not have to deal with this later. I can usually gather the clay up like that in my hand. And I'm just going straight down to that back. Take this off. And then we'll finish the cleaning up and we're done. Bring it all the way down. So see, this ultimately, you're not going to have to trim it all. Whoa, see, it's going, it's going. Ah! You have to watch it. It's getting thin in there. All right, so let's see how this one did. Woo! Hang in there, baby.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's okay.
Nice.
So, all right.
Very good.